So we're talking about patience this afternoon. Been in the Army a little bit, talked to hundreds, maybe thousands of soldiers. And anger is one of the issues that has been brought up the most in conversations that I've had. Chap, can you help me with my anger? Help me control my anger. And over time, I've learned that anger is linked to patience, and that if we can get a handle on our patience, then one of the good byproducts of that is helping with our anger. So I want to talk a little bit, just a couple minutes about how to develop patience in our lives. And first, I want to tell you what not to do. Don't ever, ever, ever pray for patience. Now that might sound weird coming from a chaplain, but here's what I think happens. There's no magic dust. There's no patience steroid that you can inject, and then all of a sudden you got the patience of a saint. If you pray for patience, I believe that God is going to put obstacles and trials and trying situations in your life, and He's going to provide you opportunities to develop patience. So if you're going to pray for patience and say, Lord, give me patience, expect frustrating times to come. So don't do it. I wouldn't do it. What I do want to do right now is tell you how we can begin to think about developing patience in our lives. So maybe we can be more patient with our subordinates or our spouse or our kids, or the person on the road who cuts in front of us, or the checkout line at the commissary, whatever it might be. We need to become a more patient people. And so what I want to do is I want to look at one verse out of the Bible from the book of Psalms. It's Psalm 37. And we're going to look at Psalm 37, verse 7. It's a Psalm of David. And Psalms are a book in the Bible that are generally prayers or poems or songs that were used in worship in ancient Israel. And I like the Psalms because of all the books in the Bible, they are the most emotional. You cannot really just read a psalm like you're reading a book. You got to feel it. You got to feel the emotion of whatever the writer was going through at the time. A lot of the Psalms are angry. A lot of the Psalms are incredibly happy. A lot of the Psalms are sad and frustrated. This Psalm, Psalm 37, is King David. It's like a psalm of David talking to somebody who's frustrated, talking to somebody who's angry. He's giving him a pep talk. He's trying to breathe life into him. Now, what I want just to look at one verse and look at what David says in this verse. And let's break it down and see how it can help us become more patient. So it's Psalm 37, verse 7. And this might be a word for you as you listen to this. It says, "Be still in the presence of the Lord, and wait patiently for Him to act. Don't worry about evil people who prosper, or fret about their wicked schemes." Let me say that one more time. Psalm 37, verse 7, "Be still in the presence of the Lord, and wait patiently for Him to act. Don't worry about evil people who prosper, or fret about their wicked schemes." So in some bite-sized morsels, phrase by phrase, I just want to go over this verse. The first thing David says, he says, "Be still in the presence of the Lord." Those first two words I want to focus. His advice is, he says, you know what? In order to develop patience, be still. And how hard is that for us today when we are constantly in motion, constantly thinking about something, constantly doing something. Our brains are constantly stimulated from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed. Some of us even put headphones on and listen to something as we go to bed. Our brain is constantly in motion. David says, you know what? Be still. Practice stillness. Maybe when you wake up in the morning, maybe before you go to bed, maybe sneak in 15 minutes where you just sit there. Maybe control your breathing a little bit. Sometimes you can count. I remember we went to yoga, me and my wife once, and the exercises were great, but the real fascinating thing about it was the stillness that I experienced and the peace and the clarity that came with it. But it's hard to practice stillness because we are constantly in motion. And we get frustrated because, it's like 30 seconds in, I'm not feeling calm. I wait 45 seconds, a minute, I'm still stressed. I'm still thinking about things. How do I get still? I think about, a calm pond And we throw a boulder in the pond and the boulder sinks to the bottom. But then there's waves for a couple of minutes and the pond is restless. And it takes a little bit of time for the pond to get back to that calm, no waves level that it was before. And I think it's the same with us. It takes time and it's hard. But we need to practice. So are you practicing? Have you been practicing stillness? Is that even something that you even think about? David says, be still in the presence of the Lord. And I think it's neat that David put in the presence of the Lord after be still, because I think it's hard to get in the presence of the Lord with all of these things kind of stimulating our brain and fighting for our attention. When we reach stillness, like I said earlier, there's a sense of clarity that maybe we can now experience the presence of the Lord. And when you're in the presence of the Lord, maybe it's there that you will experience assurance, if that's what you need, or strength, if that's what you need, or grace or forgiveness, protection, maybe guidance. Maybe whatever it is you need from God right now, you will find in the presence of God, but you need to get still to get there. And there are so many competing voices. There are so many things that are vying for our attention, so many things I want to do tonight. So I get so wound up, so frustrated, so impatient that I miss them. And maybe I miss the presence of God. But David says, he starts out and he says, be still in the presence of the Lord and wait patiently for him to act. And again, I think it's not a coincidence that David starts out with be still in the presence of the Lord, because once we're still, then we might find the strength to be patient. It's after being still. I don't think you can do this before. I think a lot of us just want to jump to this part, the waiting patiently part. And so we wait for 15 seconds and we're so wound up, and we lose it, and we get frustrated, and we erupt. That's why the anger continues. Don't start here. If Psalm 37, verse 7 is your life, it starts with be still in the presence of the Lord. Then it says wait patiently for him to act. It doesn't just start out, wait patiently for him to act. Because right now, I'm all wound up with the affairs of the day. I'm not in a place where I can wait patiently. Someone were to cut me off right now, they would feel the chaplain's wrath. You know what I'm saying? Be still, the presence of the Lord. Practice that stillness, that quietness, that solitude, that silence. Then wait patiently for him to act. And I do like the fact that it's about, hey, wait with an expectation that God is going to do something. And that's a focus on the positive. It's a focus on, hey, I do think that God is going to do something, either in me or for me. But it's this idea of when we're waiting, we're anticipating. We're waiting with a sense of expectation. And I don't think we can get there if we just, are driving 60 miles an hour and expect to get to zero in a second. We'll crash. Slow down first. And then get to that place where we can focus on the idea of expecting something from God. And David carries this thought into the next phrase where he says, don't worry about evil people who prosper or fret about their wicked schemes. David before says, focus on waiting, expecting God to something. He says, don't fret. Don't worry about these evil people. Again, it's a focus thing. Don't focus on that. Don't let that replay in your mind. Don't let that consume more of your emotional energy than it needs to. This idea of the word worry, says don't worry. The word worry comes from one of the Old English words to strangle. And you can see the connection there. And this word fret comes from the word to scrape or to gnaw. And I just think when we fret, it's like a cheese grater on our spirit. We're just simmering or we're marinating in this negativity. It's going to be impossible to deal with patient or be patient when this stuff is on the forefront of our mind. And so David in this one little verse, we just unpack has so much for us. He says, be still, and that's where it starts, in the presence of the Lord. We need to get to that place where we're emotionally calmed down, where we can be in the presence of God, and then maybe there we can hear from God. You know, if you're dealing with anger, have you ever heard from God about your anger? What has God told you about your anger? Maybe we need to get to a place of stillness in His presence where we can hear that. Because as much as God assures us or protects us or gives us grace or whatever when we're in His presence, sometimes He'll convict us as well. He'll say, hey, this is a you problem, and you need to work on this. Be still in the presence of the Lord. Wait patiently for Him to act. Don't worry about evil people who prosper or fret about their wicked schemes. Developing patience can be the answer to our anger issues. So let's work on that this week. Have the best day possible. God bless. Walk in peace.